Coming up on this week's show, Ellie Franks is here as part of the 2016 GRL Blog Tour. Plus, the authors from the Changing on the Fly anthology are here to talk about their charity hockey book.
Welcome to the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, the show for readers and writers of gay romance fiction. If you can read it, write it, watch it, or listen to it, these two guys are going to talk about it. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Adams and Will Knaus.
Welcome to episode 53 of Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast.
I'm Jeff from JeffAdamsWrites.com.
And I'm Will from WillKnaus.com.
Hello.
Hello, welcome once again to another episode.
And welcome to you as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Episode 53.
We got some stuff to talk about.
I don't do those as well as you do.
Oh.
So, I was in LA this week.
Yes, you were.
Once again. So, some stuff happened with writing. I wrote on Winger 2 a little bit more. And since I've been home, we've both been working on GRL prep.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge stack of stuff on the floor in the office of stuff that has to ship next week. To take. It's swag and prizes and stuff.
Yeah.
Books.
Lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff. Excited about that. It's just like a week and a half away.
Getting close.
So we want to remind you, as we get close to GRL, we are planning on doing some Facebook Live while we're there. And the only way you'll see that live is if you like us on our Facebook page. And what is that address?
I don't know. I'm going to guess that it... No, I know.
You do know.
I can definitively state it is facebook.com/Big Gay Fiction Podcast.
Ding, 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 ding. Well done. That's what I get for not putting it in the notes. But yes, facebook.com/Big Gay Fiction Podcast. Like us there, and you will be among the first people to know when we are broadcasting live from GRL. Mm-hmm. Or anywhere else that we happen to have that whim to push the live button.
Which I hope we do. I think what I'm trying to say is I would like us to be more in the moment and document said moments.
Yes.
Because I think in the past we've kind of gone and then just went with the flow and let the day take us where it did. And we didn't, take enough pictures or, document who we, talked to or what panels we did. And it was all sort of like, loosey-goosey. Yeah. I think you're going as an author, we're going representing the podcast. This time it's a little more business-focused, so it'll be different in that respect. And plus, I do want to, like I said, document it more, take more pictures, hopefully talk to people do some Facebook Live stuff, and yeah.
Yeah, and help bring it to people who aren't there.
Who can't go. Exactly. Yeah. That's definitely.
This Tuesday is a day to mark on your calendar. It is the 28th anniversary of National Coming Out Day, which is a day that Human Rights Campaign has put together to celebrate coming out as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or as an ally. Mm-hmm. So mark that on your calendar. Take a moment on your Facebook page or your Twitter feed, perhaps, and just restate to your friends and family where you fall in those categories. Or if it's your first time coming out, congratulations. And enjoy the day.
Yes, that is October 11th, this coming Tuesday.
Yes.
And also there is a important birthday of note.
There is, yes. I believe it is on Friday, if I remember right. Winnie the Pooh turns 90. It's 1926 that A.A. Milne wrote Winnie the Pooh, the very first book. And yes, I have a first edition copy. It is one of my most treasured books. My mom and I found this. I was still in high school when we found this book in a used bookstore. It was a vintage bookstore in Birmingham, so it wasn't just a standard used bookstore. They dealt in these kind of volumes, and we scooped that right up because Winnie the Pooh was a big part of my childhood. There's a new Winnie the Pooh story coming out also because it just so happens that Winnie the Pooh shares his 90th birthday with the Queen of England.
Wasn't that fortuitous?
I know, right? So Winnie the Pooh and the Royal Birthday has just recently come out from Disney as a book and a audiobook written. The audio's narrated by Jim Broadbent.
Oh, cool.
There'll be a link in the show notes because the link to it is way too long to want to give you here on the podcast. But it is part of Disney UK.
Cool.
That's part of. So, happy birthday, Winnie the Pooh.
Yes. And also, speaking of birthdays, In just 3 short weeks, the Big Gay Fiction Podcast will be celebrating our birthday.
Yes.
The anniversary of our first released episode.
Yes. That will happen in the episode that will drop on October 31st, Halloween. We're very excited about that. It's been a good year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you, dear listener, would like to tell us what you've liked, what the top moments are from the first year of the show, please do so in the show notes for one of the next 3 episodes. And we may pluck those out and talk about it on that show.
I'm really curious. I hope everyone takes a few moments out of their day to go to the show notes page and write down just a quick comment. It's been a whirlwind. Nothing. Boy, a year goes by fast. Let me tell you,
it does.
Nothing. As we're standing here, nothing comes to mind as particularly stand out. I think the entire year has been kind of fun and amazing from my personal perspective. But I'm interested in what our listeners think. Is there anything that you thought was particularly funny, or a guest who was particularly insightful? Was there a
turned
moment
you on to a new book?
Exactly.
That became one of your favorites, perhaps?
Or a moment that was, between, Jeff and I that was particularly stupid. And any of those count. Let us know what you thought. Give us a shout out in the show notes for episode 53.
Yeah, at biggayfictionpodcast.com.
Time now for the GRL Guest Author Spotlight.
We're happy to welcome Ellie Franks to the podcast as part of the official 2016 GRL Blog Tour. Ellie lives in San Francisco Bay Area with her husband, 1 teenager, and 2 cats bent on world domination while she writes about gay men in pursuit of love. Her stories are a unique mix of humor and drama with enough suspense to produce fast-paced stories filled with emotion and passion and featuring characters that are quirky and complicated and sometimes a little bit dark. Thanks for being with us, Ellie.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. Thrilled, actually. Under the supervision of one of my cats, so I can't go too far off the track here.
Is he taking notes on world domination, or deciding if a podcast is what he needs for world domination? Actually, it's a her, as I recall.
It is a her. This one's Bindi, the little white cat, and I think she's just making sure that I don't stray too far off of my duties, because she has us fully dominated here. So we're all subversive to her.
Well, we'll try to keep on track. I don't want her coming after me.
That's right.
So let's talk about your 6 Days series. You're getting ready to debut Duo of Days, which is the first 2 books in paperback, which is 6 Days to Valentine's and 6 Days to Get Lucky. Tell us about this series and what the inspiration was.
It's one of those cart before the horse kinds of things that seem to happen to me all the time. But right after GRL in Albuquerque, I had this idea for a Valentine's story. And I thought, wow, if I had a guy who happened to be named Valentine, Nicholas Valentine, who hates everything about Valentine's Day, and I threw him in a bar, how would that work? And so I started to write that as a short novella. And the love interest, Fat Boy, is he was just the bouncer, and he wasn't going to be the main character at all. He was simply going to be window dressing. And you know how characters, they refuse to stay put and do what they're told. And he sort of muscled his cousin out of the plot, and that became the impetus for the story. He's trying to woo Nick, and Nick is completely oblivious to it until the end. And talking to Jeff Knight over at Wild City, he took a look at it and he said, this would be really cool if you followed this relationship over the course of a year and sort of pinged different holidays to see, to check in with the couple and see where they are. And 6 Days to Get Lucky, actually, the plot picks up about 4 weeks later from Valentine's Day. And it's a novel length. And it's their relationship, taking it to the next level. And in the background is all the craziness going around in the bar, getting ready for St. Patrick's Day. And so the series has, I think, 5 or 6, um, installments over the course of the year to kind of see where their specific relationship arc goes.
That's kind of exciting. What's the next holiday coming up that we'll see them in?
It's 6 days to get away. And now that they're officially a couple, I wanted to kind of give them a little bit of a breather from kind of the madness of the courtship ritual, and to take a look back and kind of resolve Nick's backstory. So it's going to be their first vacation together, and how his family pops up and trips them up, and he has to resolve things with a mother and a half sister he doesn't know he has, and I'm actually pretty excited. I've got the first scene written already from that, and I can't wait to get back to it.
Cool. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, they're great characters. Can you say that about your own work? But I really love Nick. He is kind of a snarky asshole, but he's got that tender, gushy, vulnerable side. And Fat Boy as a character he's just solid. He just like lets him be him, and is trying to steer, the whole boat, very subtly. And but he's got his own issues. So to make a story interesting or a character interesting, they can't be perfect. And it was interesting. Some of the reader comments about Nick is like they love Fat Boy and they hate Nick because he's kind of a jerk. But if they're too nice in the beginning, or if they're too collected, they're not worth following. I don't think it's not realistic. So anyway, that is the series is all about Nick and Fat Boy.
And I think you do have to love your characters. Otherwise, I think they get hard to write about.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, as long as you love them, as the author, I think you have to love the jerks as well.
Yeah, they have to have redeemable qualities. And even, this is classic writing 101, right?
Mm-hmm.
The best villains are the ones that the reader has sympathy for. And even in the most vile actions, they're relatable at some level. And it makes them compelling. Will evil triumph over good, or vice versa?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, this summer you came out with some shifter action of Nuts and Men, which sounds about 180 degrees away from the Days books.
I'm pretty eclectic in what I write, and honestly, one of the reasons I love writing in the gay romance genre is it's such an overarching umbrella of subgenres. There's room to write westerns or contemporaries, or romantic comedies like my 6-day series, and contemporaries that are a little more serious. But Of Nuts to Men is about a squirrel shifter, and it was part of Dream Spinner's Daily Dose short stories in June. And that was just fun to write. I like writing short stories. This one, putting yourself in the head of a squirrel when they're shifted, and melding that with the human element was a blast. And so I really got to use a lot of my my vocabulary, all those great adjectives and action verbs, and stringing them along. I love to do that, and to do it in a playful way that is not over the top. You can't get away with that in a lot of contemporary, where your writing has to be much more structured to frame the action in a plot and stuff. But when you're dealing with a squirrel, it's all fair game, and that was a blast.
And I love the title too, because it says squirrel shifter, but it also just puns on nuts and men, and it's a great title.
The title itself was I had delivered it to Dream Spinner and on like January 5th, and like January 7th, a book came out, another short story with a squirrel shifter with an almost identical title that was a bestseller on ARE. And it was like, what are you going to do, right? And I didn't know that until it was getting close to wrapping up. I think we were almost to the galley stage when I discovered that. And so we were sort of scrambling for titles, something that would communicate squirrel shifter and would be funny. And so I pulled V.A. Maxfield and Reese Ford into it, and we started riffing off all sorts of puns. And I can't remember. I think this. I'm not sure who thought of Nuts and Men, but I know Reese had thrown out a title for a follow-up if I ever do anything. Namatse, sorry, the Hindu greeting, and
Namaste.
Namaste. So thank you. And that would be perfect if I decide to do this series. But it's a fun story. It's a squirrel shifter who's been adopted by a clan of lion shifters, big cats, cougars, and mountain lions and stuff like that. And he goes to school at Berkeley. So there's a lot of room to play with that if I wanted to do a series. But series are my bane. I don't write that fast.
But still, I mean, you've got it sitting there if you ever need it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it would be a crime not to use that title just because it's so funny and so fantastic. But and again, the characters are a lot of fun, and when it's a short, it really leaves your options open in terms of plotting and stuff like that. You don't get yourself written too far into a corner.
Right. So besides the 6 days to get away that's coming up soon, what else is in your future?
Well, I've been writing for the most over the course of the year on The Art of Pie, which was originally going to be part of the States of Love series for Oregon, and it just got too big. I think it's about 70,000 words right now, and I'm 3/4 of the way done. I'm sort of in a quandary about whether to expand it or wrap it up now. As you write, when you're trying to write to a word count, there's a lot of scenes you sort of edit out in your head and you don't put on paper. And I'm going through that process right now of sort of a bit of an existential crisis on, whether I'm going to do it or not. But it's a story of two boyhood friends that are separated when they're about 11. And the story picks up 20 years later, and it's written in parallel scenes where they almost see each other, almost meet each other. They're in the same place in the same time, and until they actually meet in this small town where they were boyhood friends, and then they pick up the relationship from there. So there's a little bit of a mystery involved, and but their emotional relationship has never dulled. They've always been connected, even though they've been separated. So it's based in Gold Beach, Oregon, where I spent most of my summers growing up. My grandparents had a house on the Rogue River, and so it's the setting is very autobiographical. I know how it feels and how it smells, and there's a lot of love for that place in that book. So I want to do it right.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too. Or at least finishing it.
And speaking of looking forward, we're just a couple of weeks away from GRL. What are you looking forward to this year?
Well, the first thing I'm looking forward to is the road trip. We're driving from the Bay Area to Kansas City, Missouri. So that will be fun. Morticia Knight and I will be doing that, and we'll be playing around with a video journal as we go. And I'm looking forward to actually driving through kind of the flat part of the country. I kind of have skirted around all the edges, but I've missed out the center, the gooey center. We'll be driving through the gooey center. And, but once I get there, I'm really looking forward to just relaxing. We get there early. We get there on a Monday. And before the event starts, that's the time that I get to really connect with readers and other authors and just talk. Once it starts on Thursday, it's you go from pillar to post. It's busy, but I'm looking forward to seeing my friends, making new friends, seeing all those readers and our online people. That's always the best.
Excellent. And what's the best way for everyone to keep up with you online? And especially, do you know where they can keep up with your road travels?
Well, for sure, I know Morticia Knight is going to set up a YouTube channel for that. But Ellie Frank's Facebook probably gets the most activity. On Twitter, I'm under @Boxster and that link is I think it's on Facebook. If not, my web address, elliefranks.com. You can catch up on all of those links, and you can see the latest Facebook posts and my blog posts and those sorts of things. So, but Facebook is where I tend to be there the most often.
Okay. We will link up to all of those in our show notes, along with links to all the books that we talked about. Cool. Ellie, thank you so much for spending some time with us. We look forward to seeing you in Kansas City.
Oh, it'll be great. And I'll buy you a beer or something for hosting all this.
You can follow the GRL Blog Tour by going to gayromlit.com/2016 blog tour.
So the Big Gay Fiction Podcast has teamed up with the authors we're hosting on the GRL Blog Tour to give away a 7-inch Fire tablet that's loaded with ebooks from the authors that we've hosted, as well as some ebooks from me, plus Wild City Press is also giving up books from its authors who are attending GRL. You can see the Rafflecopter on episode 53 show notes to enter. The Big Gay Fiction Podcast Blog Tour giveaway runs through Sunday, October 23rd, so there's just 2 more weeks to go before it's all gone. Now you need your word of the week to get your extra bonus entries, and what is that word this week?
This week's word of the week is out. O-U-T, out.
In celebration of National Coming Out Day.
So, yes, be sure check those show notes. Get your entries in for this week's Rafflecopter.
Yes. Yeah. So you've been watching some documentaries.
Yeah, I wanted to quickly go over different documentaries I've seen recently. All of them were about the business of show.
Ooh.
The first one, I enjoyed all of them, which is why I wanted to bring them up. The first one I want to talk about is Tab Hunter Confidential. And this is the on-screen documentary version of his biography. They came out, I think it was roughly 10 years ago.
Just about, yeah.
And so Tab Hunter Confidential covers, the standard biographical, rise to stardom type of stuff. As it pertains to Tab. I really get into this sort of like golden age of Hollywood stuff. Mm-hmm. I love it to pieces. And this is particularly interesting as it kind of pulls back the curtain of what it takes to like make a teen heartthrob. What was particularly interesting about this particular documentary is it covers Tab's, not only his burgeoning acting career, his singing career, for which I think it's Warner Brother Records. He was under contract. Was it Warner Brothers? Oh, gosh, I should have written this stuff down.
I don't know.
He was under contract at one of the studios, and he had a ginormous hit song. And the studio said, well, why is this stupid record company making all this money. We're going to start a record company of our own. I'm pretty sure...
That sounds very Warner Brothers.
I'm pretty sure it was Warner Brothers Records. They started the label specifically for Tab. So he was a big deal actor, a big deal teen heartthrob, and a big deal singer. One of the other things it covers is his relationship with Anthony Perkins, and how Tab never really played the Hollywood closet game. He, of course, went out on dates with starlets. All the studios encouraged their closeted stars to do that. They also encouraged their stars to marry other stars who were usually in the closet as well. Tab never played that game. That just wasn't for him. Also, it goes over the scandalous revelation of how early in his career he was arrested at essentially a gay party in Hollywood. Confidential magazine, which is where the name of this particular documentary comes from. Confidential magazine leaked the story that Tab was gay to the public, and that was actually part of a deal they made with Tab's disgruntled agent. The Confidential originally wanted to run a story outing Rock Hudson, but at that point Rock Hudson was a much bigger star, so they threw Tab Hunter.
Yeah. Okay.
So Tab got kind of thrown under the bus for the sake of Rock Hudson's career. Luckily, though, that story didn't really do much damage to Tab. He continued making records and movies, and the movie also covers his resurgence later on after his teenage heartthrob stardom, like doing movies like Lust in the Dust and Grease 2 and some of the crazy out-of-the-box stuff he did later in his career. So that was really, really wonderful. I highly recommend Tab Hunter Confidential. Also, I recommend a movie called Women He's Undressed. And this is the story of Ori Kelly. Now, if you watch TCM in any great amount, you probably know Ori Kelly is the legendary Hollywood designer. And this is the story of a poor Australian kid who dreamed and adored the Hollywood movie magazines and going to the movies with his mom. He eventually came from Australia to New York, and he sort of found his way to the stage there, and had a vaudeville act, and he met a guy named Archibald Leach, and they spent some time together being, roommates. And Ori and Archibald eventually went to Hollywood to try their luck there. Archibald changed his name to Cary Grant, and we all know the story with that. And Ori eventually got a job at Warner Brothers, and he eventually became their lead designer. During his rise to prominence at Warner Brothers, primarily in the 30s, the designers really focused on glamour, looking at what Adrian was doing at MGM was almost diametrically opposite of what Ori Kelly was doing at Warner Brothers. While still very glamorous and beautiful, his clothes tended to focus more on tailoring and realistic details. Some of that MGM stuff is like beautifully bonkers and over the top. But Ori was fascinated with the character. The clothes had to serve the character, which made him very good friends with Bette Davis. She and Ori got along famously. He designed some of her most iconic looks, the red dress in Jezebel, the beautifully tailored gowns and suits in Now Voyager. So the movie covers his rise to prominence in the 30s. He eventually kind of fell out of favor, but then came back. It's really fascinating. Once again, if you're into that old Hollywood stuff, I highly recommend it. Most of these movies are available streaming right now as we speak on Netflix. So check those out. I enjoyed them.
You've been a busy boy. Yeah. So this week I had the great opportunity to speak to Avon Gale, V.L. Locey, Heather Lire, Cherylanne Corneille, and Jenn Needle. All about the hockey charity book called Changing on the Fly, which will come out on October 12th, which is Wednesday, and also the opening of NHL season for 2016-17. So let's listen and see what they have to say.
Cool.
I'm very happy to welcome some of the authors and the cover designer for Changing on the Fly, which is an MM hockey romance charity anthology that's coming out this week. I've got Cherylanne Corneille, Avon Gale, V.L. Locey, and Jenn Needle. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, Avon, I know you're speaking for the group. Tell the listeners a little bit about how this anthology came together and what charity you're supporting with it.
Sure. So I think BL and I were talking last year, wasn't it, Vicky, at this point? Yeah. Been a year ago. We were just kind of talking about anthologies and sort of kind of threw around this idea to just do a completely 100% donated to a charity that supported inclusion in athletics for all level of athletics, from players to fans, coaches, all that. And we thought it would be great to see if we could get a couple of authors together who might want to, donate a story, and then see if we could put everything together and release it during, to coincide with the start of the season. And then run through the length of the hockey season until probably May. And then the stories would revert back to their original authors. And then, that was kind of what it was. We just sort of started like a Facebook group and started kind of reaching out and seeing if we knew people that might want to be a part of it.
That is very cool. And it's going to a charity that supports inclusiveness in athletics, which is great because we know as much forward progress as there's been with college athletes coming out and some pro athletes starting to come out, there's still a long way to go there.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's a small thing we can do to help. So a lot of us are, I think for the most part, are primarily write a lot of hockey romance. And so it just seemed like a really good way to give back, kind of.
So let's talk about the stories that are going into it. Avon, we can start with you since you've been the spokesperson thus far. Tell us about your story.
My story is called Next Season, and it's about a player who is part of one of like a big name trade, but he's not the big name player. He's kind of like the prospect that gets sent along with the big name player. And it's set in the NHL, but I of course changed the names. So he goes from the Buffalo Knights to the Philadelphia Foxes, and they're not a very good team, but he gets a spot on the roster where he had before been kind of playing between the AHL and NHL. So he's pretty excited about it. But he's going along with the actual captain of the Knights, whose name's Everett Sparrow. And Everett is not quite as thrilled because the Knights are like a playoff team, and Everett isn't so thrilled about having to move to Philadelphia. And the story is kind of it's all told from Nick's point of view. And the two of them have to share a townhouse when they get to Philadelphia, just because, I'm sure there's plenty of room for people to actually buy their own home. But I liked the idea of them having to be roommates. And Nick is gay and has a huge crush on Everett, but just kind of tries to stay out of his way because Everett's he's kind of cranky about the whole trade thing. And so the story just basically goes through the two of them as they get to kind of know each other, become friends, and then they eventually sort of hook up. And then it does deal a little bit with some issues of Nick's thinking about coming out, and so is Everett, and just kind of what that would mean in the sense, not so much even what the other players would think, but kind of about the media uproar. I went to Mizzou, actually live in Columbia, Missouri, and so that's where Michael Sam played football. Mm-hmm. And I remember when he came out, the media frenzy about it. And I always thought, like, it's not even that it was negative attention, but all that attention, that must be very daunting to the other athletes who are looking at this and thinking, like, can I put myself, my teammates, all, people through that? that intense scrutiny about something that doesn't really have anything to do with how I play hockey. And so I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit, like what might keep people from making that step, and how it's not necessarily that they're afraid of the reaction of other people as much as that media scrutiny, if that makes sense.
Because I think that's something that would actually, after seeing what happened with Michael Sand, could keep people in the closet longer.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that at some point, like, unfortunately, it's almost like the first person who does this, I hate to say that, like, well, it's expected, but because of what we saw with Michael Sam, it's like that happens, and then maybe it makes it easier for the next person, which is great, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's very hard on that first person. So that was sort of what I was examining, was kind of, in addition to Nick, who was kind of a quiet guy as a defenseman, making this huge life change and getting a spot on the roster and being really excited about it, but also just mixing in with a new team and trying to figure out how to be himself and then have a relationship with someone and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So Cherylanne, we'll come to you next. Tell us about your story.
Okay. Yes, my story is called Even Strength, and it actually examines a lot of what Avon was just talking about. It's about a Japanese Canadian player who actually came out in college in his senior year to kind of go ahead and get rid of some scrutiny that was coming onto his college team. So he went ahead and came out, and he's now dealing with the fallout of that from when he actually gets to the NHL during his rookie season. So he's dealing with that, but he's also dealing with his boyfriend, Tristan, also managed to come with him to North Carolina. Me being a Carolina Hurricanes fan, I decided to go ahead and set it in Carolina, even though I do live in Florida. I went ahead and changed it. They're called the Carolina Crew. I'm also a huge fan of pirate movies and such, so we went with that direction. And he basically tries to deal with some things on the ice and off the ice, as far as some folks that don't necessarily think he belongs there. But he does have a lot of the support of the different team, the players and the organization, so the coaches, that sort of thing. He's got some great friends. The alternate captain is a good friend of his, as well as one of the other defensemen who happens to be one of the aging defensemen on the team, but he really kind of takes them under his wings. So it's a lot of kind of a coming of age sort of story in that sense.
Okay, so VL, we'll come over to you. I suspect your story is in New York because you've got Broadway in your title.
It is, yes. Well, I'm quite partial to those New York hockey players as it is, but mine's set, as you said, it's set in New York, and it's titled On Broadway, and it's very much a Prince and the Pauper kind of story, where you have one young man who's the captain and star center for the New York Night Wings, Riley Zealy, and he has everything that you would think anybody could want that would make them happy. He's got money, fame, skills, good looks, but he's a closeted gay man living a very solitary life in one of the biggest yet loneliest cities in the world. And he comes across, as fate does sometimes, throws a homeless young man in his path, and Raleigh just can't forget him, and they tend to bump into each other a few times, and they end up helping each other in ways that I don't think either one of them could have possibly predicted. It also, as Avon's story and Cheryl's story, touches on how difficult it is for players to come out, and the media scrutiny that follows that kind of an announcement, and the fear of the players of having to put themselves through this.
It sounds like such a New York story, too, with the addition of the homeless man, because, I mean, that is such a thing in New York, as it is in any big city, but that's an interesting twist on it.
Yeah, well, I like to try to get some social issues into my stories if I can, and I felt that touching upon the homeless LGBT youth really needed to be brought to the forefront a little bit, and that there's a lot being done, but there's definitely not enough. So I'm hoping that that'll shine a light on that a little bit.
We've been joined by Heather Lire, Welcome, Heather.
Hi.
Tell us about your story in the anthology.
So mine is called Going Home. It's about two boys who are boys. Two boys, because in my mind they're still stuck in that high school setting because there's a lot of issues happen there. But it takes place 10 years after they've graduated from high school. And my character Blake, Las Vegas has been granted the new hockey team, the new expansion team. So he's been hired on their coaching staff. So he goes home, and he's from Vegas. He's Vegas native. His family's been in Vegas since the 1930s. So he goes home, and he's not really happy about being back in Vegas because Vegas holds no happy memories for him. And so, but he's going because it's a great job. And along the way, he drags his best friend in. He gets them to sign his best friend to go on the team as well, who's had some struggles. Oh, he's been in town about a month, and him and his best friend decide to go on a trip down memory lane. And he runs into the boy that he was in love with in high school. And he hadn't come out in high school. And it wasn't because his high school would have been very understanding. His high school would have been extremely understanding because during the height of the AIDS epidemic, his high school lost their most beloved choir teacher to AIDS. And so they all were being gay just wasn't an issue in their high school because most of his classmates had older siblings who had Mr. Ball. And Mr. Ball was actually my choir teacher. And on the night I graduated from high school, he passed away from AIDS. So it very much is a homage, for me at least, to these two boys who grew up in a school where it was okay to be gay, but because of things in their families, they hid it. And now they're at a place where they're going home and they have to figure out how to be in a healthy relationship in a setting where they've never allowed themselves to be happy in. There was a lot of emotion. The story went where I was not expecting the story to go. It was supposed to be a quick 10,000 word book. They just quickly turned into a 70,000 word story. So my story is actually a prequel. So you get to meet Blake and Micah, and you get a little bit of their backstory and what happened in school. And the next part, which is finding home, is going to pick up right where Going Home ends.
I love how each of the stories really tackles, there's more than romance going on there.
Blake, one of my heroes, the other hero, Micah, he was bisexual and was in the military. And now he's a school teacher in their high school. So it's going to dredge up a whole lot of emotions for them and facing their past and breaking down misconceptions in their own family and in their own community.
No, it's really interesting too with mine as well, is the fact that there's a little bit of a snippet where Nate, my main character, is actually out at a community event and runs into this little girl that he happens to be, make a connection with. And it turns out that her dads were both military as well. So that, full circle on that one too. And I also tried to, also wanted to bring a little more diversity into it, with Nate being Japanese Canadian. So he's also kind of got that going on as well. In addition to also being a gay man trying to make it in the National Hockey League. So
I'm dying here because you just said that yours is half Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Blake is Japanese Brazilian.
There you go. We're just bringing the diversity.
Machismo. I'm married to a Latin man. Oh my gosh.
Let's swing over to Jen for a second. As you're getting all these stories and hearing from all the authors, how did you decide what to put on the cover?
Well, because they're so different in a lot of ways, and there's some common themes that are running through all of them. But it would be impossible to put a person on the cover, which is, I think, traditionally what a romance novel would do, especially ones that were sex-oriented, as your steamy stories seem to be. But because, as the ladies were saying, there's so many different nationalities represented, and there's just so many different types of people that they're writing about. It was impossible for me to find somebody
Sorry.
okay, that would represent the whole anthology. So I was trying to think of some kind of scenery that would work. And then I just really loved the title changing on the fly because it just made me instantly think of a locker room. And I loved the kind of cheeky twist to that, like, you know, everybody jokes about like locker room shenanigans and, you know, what happens when you're changing, you know? So initially my idea for it was a lot more complicated. But I thought the idea of just the two jerseys hanging there and who knows where their owners are, I don't know. You got to read this anthology to find out. So hopefully it inspires a few people to read it.
And of course, the fact that you've got the 20 and the 16, I mean, that worked really well. I have to admit that my hockey player mind just went to, you know, the concept of changing on the fly on the ice, and I wasn't even connecting it to the locker room necessarily, but I like how that works too.
I love that it works both ways, right? Yeah.
And we should mention that there are also stories in the anthology from Samantha Wayland and Mary Smith to round out the full 6 that are in the book. So the final question, which is kind of roundtable, what is it about hockey that attracts you guys as the thing you write about?
I don't know it, but I'm Canadian, so I have to love hockey.
She's the one that got me watching hockey.
That's true. And then
that's funny.
Greater.
Yeah, she got me watching the Canucks, and I was like, okay, this is great. And then she's like, you got to pick a team. So I picked the Bruins, and it was 2011, and we're still friends.
Yeah, and we went to Boston 2 weeks after the Cup final.
Yeah, Jen is a good sport about everything, and especially that, because she had to stand there waiting for me to, like, find her in this, like, weren't you, like, downtown, and there was that huge poster of Chara, and you were like, I hate my life. Like,
yeah, I was waiting for her to get in, because my plane got in hours before hers, so I was just walking around Boston, and I turned this corner, and there's this giant banner of Zdeno Chara holding the cup over his head, and I was like, why are you doing this to me?
And I don't live in Boston, so I was like, we have to go to the pro shop. Like, really, it's amazing you still put up with me. Thank you.
I actually write all sports. My sons are football players, and my oldest is being scouted by some big D1 schools. So I was like, I kind of fell into writing. I wrote a hockey book, and my agent was like, you're really good at hockey. You should keep writing it. And I'm like, I know nothing about the sport. My hero happens to play hockey, but he doesn't spend any time on the ice during the game during this book, and I know nothing about the sport. And I live in Denver now, and so I actually called the Avs last year, and I said, so I'm an author, and I'm writing a hockey book, and I know nothing about the sport. Can you help me?
Oh,
that's cool.
They actually gave me tickets. It was so funny because they gave me tickets for my family to go to. We were playing the Kings. It was a preseason game. And so I took my sons. And at first they were not interested at all because they're like, Mom, this is not football. This sucks. Mom, this is not football. This sucks. And then the little ice bunnies came out. And they perked up because they're 16. And they went, Mom, this sport's kind of cool. And then someone from the Kings smashed one of the Avs right in front of us, and my kids looked at me and they went, you can hit this sport? We need to play it. And I'm so now I still know nothing about hockey, but I know athletes. And I figure I can fudge the hockey. There's enough people in my life who know hockey that I can do that, but the athlete mindset, their dedication, the things that they have to do on and off the field, that's my life. And so I can write that.
Well, I know, like, for myself, I'm probably going to date myself terribly here, but I'll do it anyway. I grew up living about 25 minutes from the Spectrum, in Philadelphia.
Jeez.
I
remember the Spectrum.
My first crush, actually, sports crush, was Bobby Clark when he was on the Broad Street Bullies. If you lived that close to Philly, you cheered for the Broad Street Bullies, or you were run out of town on a rail.
That hairdo and that mustache.
Oh, Bob, he was just angelic, wasn't he? So I, as life does, it took me away from Philadelphia, and I ended up living in the mountains, the north central mountains of Pennsylvania. And I kind of drifted from the sport a little bit. And I had started writing again, or writing professionally, I suppose I should say. And I came across a submissions call for an MM sports anthology. And I said, well, I've always enjoyed hockey, so, I'll touch base with it again. It'd been quite a long time. And living up here, the only teams that you could find were the Sabres or the Rangers. So I happened to flip on a Rangers game, and, of course, it was Henrik Lundqvist. So, that was an immediate draw. But I also I fell in love with the personality of the team and the spirit of the team. And then, from there, I just fell back into the sport. So it's been an in and out kind of relationship with me with hockey. And I'm very happy to be back cheering for. It's not my hometown team, so which I get guff about a lot, but I'm very glad to be back and be able to, enjoy the game. And I've met so many wonderful people and so many wonderful sports romance authors, and the genre is really just starting to come into its own now, and I'm so happy to see that.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting too, because my guy's on the TV right now. One of the reasons I'm I'm into hockey. I went to Boston U, so I have a connection in Boston as well. But I grew up a little bit. I grew up pretty close to the Canadian border, but I remember my mom cheering for the Miracle on Ice team, which is why the book is actually dedicated. My portion of the book is actually dedicated to her because of that. But I went to Boston U, and then also did I've done a lot of behind the scenes stuff as far as hockey goes. I actually did an internship in the National Hockey League and in the AHL as well. So if Heather ever needs anything, I've got her back on that portion of it. But in any case, but I'm ended up actually working with the AHL team that was the farm team for the then Hartford Whalers and the former Winnipeg Jets that are now in Arizona. So that's how I really delved into it then. So, but BU won the national championship my senior year in high school and in college. So that was kind of kismet, I guess. So that's how I ended up started doing the hockey thing. So, and I still stick with it even though I'm in Florida. I'm actually driving up to North Carolina at Thanksgiving, finally get to see my team at home again, so it's great.
I find so amazing is like if you listen to all these wonderful authors talking, there's so much hockey knowledge, and we're all women. So, I know all of us run into it more than we would like to, but it's nice to see this kind of knowledge of among women. And I mean, we know what we're talking about, guys. We truly do.
I think a large part of that is I remember having a conversation with, I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was J.C. Burton, but it probably wasn't J.C. Burton, but she might have been there. We're talking about it. And how come so many women can write these athletes and really dive into the mindset. And someone in the group said, well, how many of us are moms of athletes, whether they're a boy or they're a girl? And 95% of us raised our hands. And they go, so regardless of what the sport is, what draws readers to us writing it is because we get the athlete mindset. If you understand the athlete mindset, you can write any sport, regardless of how much or don't know about the sport.
I don't actually have kids, but I grew up in Kentucky, I'm a Southerner, so I never watched a game of hockey in my entire life until I came to, actually, my husband was the first person that took me to a hockey game because he's from right outside St. Louis and was a Blues fan. And so we're watching the game, and I'm 19, 20 years old probably at this point, and I looked at him and said, what happens if the ice cracks? And he's like, they put the Zamboni over it? And I'm like, but no one falls in? And he's like, you think there's a swimming pool under there? Yes, I did. I had no idea. I'd never been ice skating, but I grew up in, like I said, Kentucky, and so we watched college sports, obviously college basketball, which is where I learned to be fanatically devoted and crazy about being a sports fan. But I think what I like about hockey is that there's this, I don't know, maybe it's something about the salary cap or the fact that the players seem to change teams a lot, but I find a lot of what I love about college sports, that kind of camaraderie and the emphasis on the team over individual players. I find a lot of that in hockey too, and I think it was really easy for me to translate why I loved college sports a lot to the NHL, and then of course eventually love players as I do. But, so I don't have children, and I was kind of athletic, not really growing up, but that team aspect. And I also see that with women too, the way we are, even right now with all of us doing this anthology, and even in the romance community, and hopefully all of you have had this experience, that's a very good one, where people are very supportive and can be very uplifting, that team sort of atmosphere. I think the women are we're kind of like that when we get into something and into groups, and kind of I think that too is a part of why I like hockey so much, is that camaraderie and that the teammateness, I guess. And I think that a lot of us as authors have found that in this community as well. And writing about it becomes kind of natural, if that makes sense.
I remember having a conversation with Carly Phillips and regarding sports books, and she was one of the very first authors who dared to write a sports romance. And she was told that her book, that no one was going to buy her book. Sports romance didn't sell. And that was her very first sports romance.
It's so huge now.
Oh, it is. It's growing exponentially.
This was
and I've definitely seen a big influx of the male too, bringing it back to our anthology. Seen a huge influx of the male sports romance as well. Even just within the last year, the influx of those stories. And it's nice to, and I've actually even started to see some female, which is interesting too. So
I'm writing my first FF one right now.
I'm so excited about that. Not gonna lie.
Someone's writing one for Riptide in our group. Who is it?
That's me. Yeah.
Is it you?
I'm not writing it. I'm writing an FF. It's not a hockey book, but I do have a trilogy planned, though it doesn't have a home yet. That it's all about hockey player, women hockey players, and a surfer. So there's some FF going on in there. But.
That's awesome. We're actually running out of time. I want to make sure that people know that Changing on the Fly does come out October 12th, which is the opening day of the NHL season. Go Red Wings.
Go Av! Not that I know.
Go Canes! Go Canes!
I know it's an ebook. Is there going to be a paperback edition also?
Yes.
I know Mary's working on that. So
she is, as we speak, probably.
Okay, that's awesome. I can't thank you all enough for taking some time out and all getting together at the same time so we could talk. And I wish you much success.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, I thank again the ladies from Changing on the Fly for taking some time and actually all coming together at the same time to have a chat about the new book. I haven't read it yet. I've got it on pre-order. I declined an ARC because I really want to, support the charity. And frankly, I wouldn't have had time to read it and digest it anyway. But there's some great authors there, and I'm looking forward to those stories after hearing about them.
Yeah, definitely.
What do we got coming up next week?
Well, next week, in episode number 54, Ethan Day was here, and he's going to be part of the GRL Blog Tour. And we're also going to be talking about, GRL, that thing.
The thing that happens next week.
Yeah. We're going to be previewing GRL with Jay from Joyfully Jay.
Yeah, so we hope all of you can join us then, and wish you all a good week.
Thank you for listening to Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. New episodes are available every Monday at iTunes and other major podcast outlets. While there, subscribe to the show and please consider leaving a review. For detailed show notes, links, and to sign up for the monthly newsletter, visit biggayfictionpodcast.com.